Starting an aesthetic practice is exciting, but building one on the right foundation, that's where many owners get it wrong. From choosing the wrong corporate structure to signing a lease that limits growth, the early decisions you make shape the future of the entire business. Welcome back to the Business of Aesthetics podcast. I'm your host, Don Adeesha, and today we are breaking down the A to Z of starting an aesthetic practice effectively. Joining us is a man who has spent over 50 years in the medical field, from being a paramedic in the 70s to managing a multi-million-dollar practices. He is the founder and CEO of Shorr Solutions, Jay Shorr. Jay, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. It's an honor to be a guest on the podcast because I'm usually the one hosting the podcast. And now I'm even a guest on my own podcast as I'm turning it over to my crew and my team.
Oh, that's amazing. How does it feel? Well, we'll get to know how does it feel as we go along the way. So yeah, actually, before we dive into the business side of things, Jay, I wanted to ask you, since I mentioned you started your journey in 1972 as a paramedic in Philly. So looking back at those high stakes emergency situations, how did that experience shape your no nonsense approach to fixing medical businesses today?
When you are in an emergency trauma situation, you have better thought about what you're going to do before you get there. And then it's the element of surprise, finally, when you get to an emergency scene, and it is basic instinct and triage. You really don't have time to think because you don't have seconds to waste. It can all be over in a flash. So when I got into emergency, it was because of my dedication to always want to help. And this was a way for me to do it, get some like type of a quasi medical education real quick to be able to get to be a paramedic and, drive that ambulance. And people don't understand, but even driving a rescue vehicle is an art in and of itself because you have people in the back trying to save a life, and you've got to be very cognizant. Do you keep going? Do you stop? Whatever. And I just found the thrill of it at a very young age. And then as I got older, I was a corporate director of safety, health, security, fraud, and embezzlement. And then I just loved it. And I ended up falling in love with a cosmetic surgeon, a dermatopathologist, Mohs surgeon, and she owned a very large practice here in Fort Lauderdale. And I retired from corporate America and joined her practice as an administrator. And it was from then ever since. I mean, I just loved the journey. Well, long story short, my late wife, became ill and passed very quickly from stage 4 cancer. And right before then, I decided to take the show on the road to teach businesses how to be a real business, to try to teach doctors what is the right way to run your business, because there's so many components in the operational, administrative, financial, and marketing, and it changes all the time. They didn't have websites when I started. We had yellow pages.
Well, that's a wonderful start. And really, Jay, it seems that that dedication you had from the get-go of wanting to help has brought you this far. And hopefully, we'll continue more towards the future as well. We're looking forward to that. Now, Jay, you work with hundreds of practices at every stage, from startup to scale. When someone tells you they're about to open their first aesthetic practice, what are the biggest mistakes you already know that they're about to make?
The first word I say when somebody tells me they want to open up their practice is, hmm. It's like, do you know what you're in store for? Most new aesthetic practices don't fail because of the clinical skill that they have. They've been trained at all stages. The owner they failed because the owners underestimated the business, whether that is an executive management person or whether it is the doctor, because in certain states and commonwealths, physicians have to own the business, and in other states and commonwealths, the non-medical provider like you and I can open up a business. But they fail because they underestimate the business. And everything that we're going to speak about is the structure before the strategy, not clarity before growth. All right. Because we
Hmm.
do have to have clarity before growth. What's the biggest mistake? The biggest mistake is they act like clinicians opening a room, not a CEO building a company. Medicine's a business. It's the art of science. In our business, it's a way to look you young and beautiful. It's one of the most respected professions today. But it's a business and you got to treat it like the business that it is. So I usually say in my key words, Don, when you want to open up a practice, let me give you two key takeaways. You're not going to come in on time and you're not going to come in on budget. Are you prepared for that? And if the answer is yes, I say, let's move forward because you've got a lot of predictable mistakes ahead of you.
Now, you've seen many clinicians make the jump from the hospital or a group practice. What is the hardest mindset shift for a doctor to go from being the lead provider to being a CEO?
Well, there's so many stages, and here's where we take them from. We take them from the infancy of internships, residencies, fellowships. Then we take them from academia. They come from a university where they're in a teaching setting or a medical practice setting in a university. Or
Hmm.
they come from the corporate side where a lot of these large groups have multiple practices, or they've been working for the private practitioner and they want to know, do I want to keep working for the doctor or do I want to go out on my own? And when we take them on their own, I say, hey, let's share some predictable mistakes, okay? Because the biggest mistake that first-time aesthetic practitioners make when they first want to do this is they don't have a business model. And the failure to plan is the plan to fail. I didn't make that line up. We've heard this for years. So we say you've got to have a business plan, operational, administrative, financial, marketing. And we will help you with every one of those stages. You assume Botox, fillers, a laser equals revenue, and it doesn't because you don't define your true price strategy, patient acquisition costs, or even your service mix. What is it that you want to do? Oh, I want to open up. What do you want to do? Well, a service provider that's a non-surgeon will do all the non-surgical. The service provider, who is the surgeon, the facial body plastics, the facial plastics, the oral maxillofacial surgeon, the oculofacial plastic surgeon, you know, all of these things, even now, dentists are getting into our space or have gotten into our space. What's the other mistake? They don't understand the capital requirement and the needs. Oh boy, that's a really big one. And they sign terrible leases. They don't know what they're getting into because we learned something when we were in elementary school. The
Hmm.
definition of a noun, people, place, thing. You never thought you'd hear that again, did you, Don? Well, guess what? In order to run your people, you need people. In order to run your business, you need people. You need a place to run it at, and you
That's
need the
right.
things to sell. And they don't realize that. They hire too much. They hire out of emotion. They should always have a secondary person also interviewing because we'll pick up mistakes. You're going to hire on emotion too quickly because you want to get open very quickly and you don't look at, the holes. You don't have a compliance infrastructure. policies, procedures, protocols, HIPAA, OSHA training. Oh, I'll get to it. No, you need to do it within your first 10 to 30 days of opening your business or hiring somebody. And you don't even have that in place. So right away, you're in violation. You have no marketing engine, you have no social media, and you have no financial dashboard for KPIs. So what are you doing? You're opening up a business, you don't even know how to open it.
It's that tunnel vision, you get into with the excitement and the thrill of going out on, your own. I'm doing this now, my way. But yeah,
But you
there's a
know what it
long
is,
road
Don?
ahead.
The average person only sees how much revenue they're bringing in. Hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, but they don't realize what goes into it. They don't realize in my former operating room, it cost over 7 figures to build it. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars a month to operate that business. Yes, I was bringing in millions a month, but it cost millions to run it. And if you're hopefully lucky to get a 30% margin, then you're in good shape. But it takes time.
Yeah, it takes time, dedication, and understanding that 30% is actually good.
Good.
Getting, yeah, there we go. Now, Jay, let's start at the beginning of this journey. Before a single patient walks through the door, what are the non-negotiables in setting up the business properly? Talking about the LLCs, PLLCs. Um, where do most people get this wrong, and what should they be doing differently?
Okay. Well, there might be 4 or 5 different ones. The first one
Yes.
is choosing your wrong entity type. Most states, commonwealths, require that there's either a PLLC or a PC. Let me explain. One is a professional limited liability company or a professional corporation for medical services. Like in New York, you have to have a PC. But people form a generic LLC because it's easy. And they discover that they're out of compliance. Why is it easy? Because you can go onto the Secretary of State website. You can fill out the application for 50, 100, 150, $300, whatever that state or commonwealth charges. You pay the fee, and all of a sudden you've got a business. It's very easy to start a business legally. Whether you're in compliance or not is a different story. And then they don't separate clinical and management entities. Common best practice structure, for example. A professional entity, a PLLC or a PC, that provides medical services or even a management company like an LLC or an MSO, we can get into that later, that handles the
Mhm.
operations, the marketing, the staffing, the leases. And this protects liability and really simplifies partnerships later. Because who is supposed to do what? You haven't seen a patient yet, but you've got to build a foundation. You've got to build
Mhm.
the base. You've got to build the beams and the structure but then you put the roof on. Before you start hiring people and buying things, you've got to have your foundation. And then
Mhm.
skipping operating agreements. Even solo owners need one. Banks, investors, partners require it. You can't go in and try to get money and a loan without an operating agreement because the bank and people are going to know what happens if and when. So we help with all of these. And then you have incorrect employee identification numbers, national
Mhm.
provider numbers, the MPIs, state registrations that are missing, state medical board registrations. You don't have CLIA waivers if you're doing lab work. I don't want to get boring into some of these things, but it can get monstrous. Do you have state and
Mhm.
local tax registrations? Why do I need
Mhm.
that, Jay? Well, are you selling anything? If you're selling anything and you have to charge tax, then you have to collect the tax. Oh, did I mention that you've got to pay the tax that you collect? This is not a free bank. You might get 1, 2, 2.5% refund rebate from the state for collecting it, but you have to collect it.
Mm.
And I've heard all kinds of stories. I collect it, well, but I paid tax from the beginning. I didn't have a tax number, so I paid tax to the vendor. I don't have to pay the state because I've already paid the tax. No, you paid the tax on the wholesale, but now
Mm.
you sold it retail. So you owe the state the difference between what you paid and what you sold it for, that tax. And people go, I didn't know that. Well, thousands of dollars later and fines and penalties, you will. All right. And then you don't have the proper types of malpractice coverage, cyber liability coverage, EPLI insurance coverage. There's so much insurance requirements that you don't even know. And then if you form a partnership, you need other types of insurances. Keyman, business operating, buy sells. Why? Because when you don't, and you run into a nightmare situation with the death of a partner or an owner, you're going to see how the vultures come after you. And you're going to see how lawsuits happen between the partners if you didn't have it spelled out from day one. These are my wishes, both, and everybody signs off, multiple partners or one. And therefore, when the incident happens or you want to dissolve the partnership, you have a means and a structure. Think of a business, if you have partners, as a marriage. And think about what happens when you get divorced.
Oof, that's a lot. And definitely,
It's a lot. It's a lot. We go through a lot.
absolutely. And it might seem, a bit overwhelming to that, that single provider that might be thinking, oh, I'm finally about to go on my own. I just want to be my own boss. And then you're hit with all of these things.
Everybody wants to be their own boss. It seems pretty, and you can make a lot of money. If you are the doctor surgeon
Mm.
or the nurse practitioner PA that is also the provider, then how are you going to run your business and be in your business, outside of your business, making the money, hiring the people? You know what? It's better you make $1,000 and $2,000 an hour in that exam and operating room and pay somebody a few $100s an hour to do the things that you can't do. Maybe stay with the consultant or a manager while they do it so you learn it,
Mm.
but don't try to do it on yourself because you don't know if you're doing it right.
There we go.
Let's
Now,
talk about what you should do differently from day one. All right? That's an important thing. What would I do differently? What you do differently? First of all, you have to form the correct professional entity. We went through that. Corporation, sub S, LLC, PC, PLLC, PA, there's all kinds. Form the proper one. Get great advice from your financial advisor or your accountant. Get even better advice from your attorney. Get great advice from your consultant. But you make sure if you ever hire a consultant and an attorney and an accountant that they all can get along because this is your executive team management. I don't call myself a consultant, Don. I tell my client, please refer to us as your executive team management team because that's what we are. All right. Consultants have a bad name. They come in, they doge, they get rid of people, cut expenses. That's not the way it is. We are partners with you. We're your coach. Second, get a management company if you want to scale. You can't do this on your own. I don't practice medicine because I'm not legally allowed to, although I know a lot about medicine. It's good for physicians and PAs and MPs to be business people, but don't spend the majority of your time doing that. get a healthcare attorney to review the formation, build a compliance binder for policies, procedures, protocols for, like I said, your OSHA, your HIPAA, set up a great accounting system and a payroll before you hire anybody, and open separate bank accounts for each one of your entities. I had multiple entities. I had separate business formation for my med spa, a separate business formation for my operating room. I had a separate business formation for all the equipment that was owned and a separate business formation for the derm plastics practice. Why? So that the liability fell on, oh, and then I had a separate business for being the property owner
Oh,
because the property owner, the landlord, me, rented to each one of my business entities, and each one had its own legal structure.
mm,
All right, so that it wouldn't hinge on the other. And each one of my offices was a separate LLC or PLLC, except for the ones I had three offices. If we took insurance for the derm, they were all under the same corporation because I needed be by insurance credentialing, I needed them all to be under the same EIN because insurance companies credential through the EIN. And then through that, you have the NPI, the national provider number, all right, for those doctors that are producing services within that EIN, that corporation. So that's how I did that. So those are the things that you should do differently, and what practice owners should negotiate and how you do it to start. It's not easy.
it's not easy, but if you make your executive management team and you make them make that decision right, I feel like it makes a lot of things more manageable.
Well, we had four practices that all opened up within like 10 weeks of each other. In the first quarter, last ending of fourth quarter of 25 and the first quarter of 26, we had an oculofacial plastics in Maryland. We have a outpatient emergency clinic in Virginia. We had a facial plastics in Oklahoma City and an internal medicine concierge practice in Aventura, Florida. Totally different. They're all different practices, but a business is a business. And the legality behind them were basically the same, except for state and commonwealth laws. All right, what was in the Commonwealth of Virginia may not be in the state of Florida or Maryland. Some of them are different. Some have the corporate practice of medicine. Some do not. There's many different requirements. Some are lax. Some are not so lax. But I always err on the side of precaution and I try to follow strict guidelines. There's no gray. If it doesn't say I can, it means
Mhm.
I can't. Don't try to
Check. And
defend your innocence when there's no clear law that says that you can do it.
right. But you did it, four practices, four different states.
Yeah, it's
And
not easy, but I have a team.
there
All
we
right.
go.
One part of my team handles marketing.
Hmm.
Another part of my team handles training. I handle compliance. Another part is I handle with HR and then finance. We all group together. We have meetings with the client every week, twice a week, and each one of us are doing certain things. And we have our own internal CRM of
Mm.
three things. What needs to be done? Who's going to do it? And when does it need to be done by? And therefore, we split the tasks and everybody can see what needs to be done. So there's never a lag because if one person is out and I speak a lot at different conferences, I'm on vacation, my team sees what has to be done and when, and everybody jumps in to help the next. Our team is called
Mhm.
La Familia because that's what we are.
That. Wow. Love that. Now, Jay, I would like to talk about the location and leases because
One of
this
my
is,
favorites. What would you
this
like
is
to know?
Okay, this is usually the place where people lock in uh, themselves into pretty bad decisions for years, right? So, what should our practice owners actually be negotiating when it comes to leases? And what are the biggest red flags, the things that may seem small, but become major problems later on?
For the most part, the business owner doesn't know what they don't know. And leases are always written in favor of landlords. The one thing about a lease, and I said this in the very beginning, I tell every one of my clients, you are not going to come in on time or on budget. Leases take a very long time depending upon who you're dealing with. If you're dealing with me as a business owner and you want to buy my house or my office is one thing. When you're dealing in a corporate structure of real estate, that you're dealing with a suite that's owned by the hospital, you better be prepared for a lot of legal, all right? And make sure that they're the ones that are paying the legal fees and have a lawyer or somebody on your side because it's going to take a while. But let's give you a takeaway and what to negotiate. The takeaway is that the lease is one of the most dangerous documents in your entire business. Why? Because it probably binds you for just about the longest period of time. 5 years, 10 years. By that point, most of your equipment has already used its life cycle. Most of your employees have probably gone already. All right. Now, there's some people that are going to be listening to this and say, "Oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about." I'm using equipment that I've had for 10 and 15 years. I'm not going to name any pieces of equipment because I don't want to be insulting. But we all know some of these cheesy pieces of equipment that if they make it for 2 years, you're lucky. Or if version 2, 3, 4, 5 doesn't come out, which makes your old system pretty archaic, your lease, you've got to negotiate because that's the first time and the only time you're going to get to negotiate it well. So, what do you negotiate? The first thing I negotiate is term. 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year. Naturally, the longer the term of your lease, the better the deal that you're going to get. And there's a thing called tenant and improvement build out, commonly known as T&I. Now, one of the things that you may or you may not know is this is all negotiable. People don't realize that it is, but it is. It's a commodity and it's negotiable. The longer term your lease, the more apt that the landlord is willing to give you more money to build it out or repair because they're going to recapture their money as time goes on. But you can even $20 to $40 a square foot can save you tens of thousands of dollars. We can even get more. And what is it for? Hey, there's several different types of rooms and things that you can rent. There's an empty shell that's going to need hundreds of thousands of dollars. There is a room or suites that have already got the walls up. All right, the rooms are set. There's just no cabinetry, there's no tile, there's no lighting. You know what I'm saying? It's there. And then there's the second generation room of somebody, Dr. Don, who was there for X amount of years. He leaves, and now you're going to come in and you want to retrofit it. So there's three different types, and you're still going to need T&I, so negotiate it. Now, free rent. I want free rent to start because when I first go in there, I'm not going to be that busy, maybe. All right. So I need to get me going. Now, what ends up happening? People don't really understand. Let's say you get a 5 year lease, 60 months. Somebody's going to give you 3 or 4 free months. They're not going to give you 4 free months in that 60. The most common way to do it is to give you 4 or 5 free months with a 5 year lease. So you'll get a 65-month lease with the first 5 free.
Mhm.
Is that 5 free months? Yes. Yes. What's the upside? I'm getting 5 free months. What's the downside? that you don't realize the 5 free months that you're getting are months 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's when the rent is the least expensive because now every year the rent's going to go up possibly about 3%. So what are those 5 months that you're talking about? Are the 61st to the 65th month that the lease was extended at the then going rate 5 years from now, which could be about 15+% higher because it's
Mhm.
3% a year, right, of a rent increase, which is a nominal increase, by the way. It's not a lot. Then
Mhm.
you have exclusivity clauses. Do I
Mhm.
want to be in an area where my next door neighbor is also going to be doing the same types of services? Now, where you can get that is in like a strip center, shopping center, or a professional building where there's accountants and architects, things like that. You're never going to get that on Park Avenue or in Beverly Hills in the Triangle where there's 100 plastic surgeons in one building. All right. You're never going to get that exclusivity. All right. And then there's assignment rights. It's critical if you ever want to sell the practice. If I'm selling my business, can I assign the lease to Dr. Don? Can I have sublessors? In other words, if now I only want to work 3 days a week and my office is available 2 days, can I rent it to Dr. Don without the
Mhm.
landlord? Many
Mhm.
will say no. Others will say yes, but they may
Mhm.
restrict you from not being able to rent it to the subtenant under the master lease agreement for anything higher than what you're already paying. In other words, the landlord's not going to let you profit. There's a difference between trying to recoup your cost and
Mhm.
profit from that. So a lot of
Mhm.
landlords won't. So ensure that in the lease that it allows you to sublease, all right, at the
Mhm.
landlord's discretion, whose acceptance shall not be reasonably denied. In other words, for what reason would you say no?
Mhm.
Now, if you tell me that they have hazardous materials and they have things in their office that we don't want, or they play music too loud and it is a disturbance to all the other people in the building, I get it. So these are things that you need. And then what are the CAM or commonly known as common area maintenance? All right. Is there a cap on these charges?
Mhm.
Because sometimes people will say, well, the electric went up for the common area, the security went up, the guard gate went up. Cap those expenses. The real estate taxes went up. So see if you can get a cap on those. Whose responsibility is it for the HVAC, heating, ventilating, and air conditioning? If the compressor goes down, it can cost you thousands of dollars. Is it yours or is it the landlord? Plumbing, electrical, major faults. When I used to rent, I used to say, you are responsible for the first 250 or $500. All right, I'll take care of the major. But you need to negotiate all these at that time. And then, do I have after hour access? Remember, we're speaking medical.
Yeah.
You may have a patient that has a bleeder or what they think is any type of an emergency. And if your building is closed after 5 o'clock and or on weekends and holidays, will your key fob allow you access to your office? You're a doctor, for goodness sake. You need
Mhm.
access to your office. And what security is there? Are there cameras that are able to see if somebody were to break into my suite? Because remember, in my office complex, we had security cameras everywhere because we had medications and drugs that can kill you.
That's
We
right.
were an operating facility. We put patients to sleep. Now, granted that they're all under triple lock and key, but if you're going to break into my business, you're going to probably want to break into the drug cabinet if you know where it is. All right.
Mhm.
And then the red flag is you're probably going to be asked for personal guarantees because a landlord wants to know if you have $10,000 a month for your rent, $5,000 a month, could be 60 to $100,000 a year for 10 years. We may be talking a half a million to $1 million. What happens if you don't have the money? The
Mhm.
landlord wants to know he's protected and he can come after you personally. and have a personal guarantee for that. And, sometimes you'll sign it and sometimes you may not. They may not give you the right to sublet. That's what I said earlier. All right. Every minor change. Do I need approval to get the locks changed? Because I used to have these Medco locks that were non-reproducible. All right. You had to have a signature in order to get that key changed. Do I have to give my landlord, that key? I did where I was, and I owned the business so the fire department can come in. Please don't break my windows. Here's where the key is. Open the door. All right. And then how much parking do you allow me? And what signage rights do I have? Don, I can go on and on and on. All
Wow,
right.
that's 10 big ones right there.
Yeah,
I was just making notes, and I think like even our listeners would do so, if they missed it out, they might come back and revisit.
I do this for every lease.
Wow.
Every. I negotiate every lease, and then I'll help to propose a lease and
Mm,
help to write it, all right, or
mm,
amend it. At that point, I put a disclaimer that I am not a healthcare attorney or an attorney, and I am not licensed to give legal advice. Please check with your healthcare and or real estate attorney. All right.
mhm.
So what we do is I'll write contracts for HR or whatever, and I'll amend them with the disclaimer. I'm not a physician. I'm not an attorney. I'm not licensed to give medical advice. I'm not licensed to give legal advice. But here is my 2 cents worth. All right. I don't know if you can see this. All right.
What's
But this is
that?
a real check, right? Can you see it?
Right, now we can see it.
That's my 2 cents worth. All
Right.
right. And this is a real check, by the way. I went into the
As-
bank and I said, I need a check for 2 cents. And they said, what? Why do you need that? I said, so that I can give people my 2 cents worth. There was hesitation in the beginning when they heard that. They thought it was hilarious.
yeah.
Immediately, it was a thing to talk about. So they gave me a check for 2 cents.
Truly. I need to kind of get a check for 2 cents now. Wow, that's genius, Jay. Wow. I mean, yeah, that's a lot of 2 cents though, in that previous answer. And I mean, just this is just for one lease. Before even signing the lease, you got to check out the property, you got to check out the market, the demands, and then potentially you're not even looking at just one place to rent, right? You're asking all these questions from 2 to 3 places that shortlisted. You're definitely not going to come in on time.
Yeah, and then what we do, Don, is I ask the client, get me a schematic. All right. I don't want a blueprint. I don't need to know where the air vents are and the wiring and the electric panel is. I need to do like a means of egress sheet that shows me all the rooms and the dimensions of the rooms. That's what I need to know. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because now I have to share with you what is a treatment room, what's an exam room, the difference, because you need more space in a treatment room because there are facial plastics and body plastics, oculofacial plastics that can do a blepharoplasty in an exam room, but they wouldn't do a quad bleph. They would take it to the surgery center. Why? Because you may want to use under MAC or conscious sedation. There are certain things that you can do locally, procedure room, and there are other things that you would not because you want the patient sedated. All right. You could do things with PO, oral sedation, in an exam room and even a procedure room, like a laser or something like that. But when you're going to be operating, you want it to be done in an OR type of a setting.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And what we look for when we get this schematic, A, is the room big enough for what you want?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're going to start bringing in an exam table, and now you're going to start bringing in, I'm not talking about a tabletop RF laser, RF or laser. I'm talking about a big box stand-up laser. Okay. Now you have that. Where's the plug going to go? Oh, by the way, did I mention? Oh, did I mention, by the way, that room doesn't have 220? It only has 110 voltage and the machine you're buying is 220. Where are you going to plug it in? Oh, did I
Mm,
mention that you're going to slip, trip, and fall over that cord because it's 20 feet away and you have to plug it in. It's on the floor, it's on the side of the wall. Get your electric in the floor so you don't have all of these lasers. Do you have enough air conditioning in each one of these rooms? Because, baby, when that laser starts firing up, the BTUs, it starts getting hot. All right. Oh, did I forget you don't want to do it in that room because it's got a window and you don't have any window treatments and you can't. Oh, you need to get the laser with the mirrors off of the wall. I mean, people don't understand all of this. All right. Oh, did I mention that your toilet and your bathrooms are right next to the exam room? You don't want that. So when somebody is going to the bathroom, you don't want the people in room one, two, or whatever hearing whatever is going on in a bathroom. Look, they're natural body functions, and we're all aware of it. But that's not something you want to hear when you're in an exam room getting your Botox, all right? Or a massage, all right? So we say, hey, and also keep your employee break and lunchrooms away from any type of patient experience rooms. Why? If you're ever in an office and you hear the men and the women cackling on a Monday about their weekend, or, oh my God, you know who's coming in this morning? Oh, that patient, what a mess. You don't want that.
yeah.
So there's a lot of considerations to think about that people don't think about. So we do all this with the client and we'll help to redesign it properly.
Love that. And for anyone starting this, like, for first time, where are you even thinking about the windows, whether they're tinted or not? You're like thinking, oh, there's enough space over here. Are you thinking about the socket, the 220 problem? Yeah. Wow. Thanks, Jay, for
No.
really shining the light, this darkness of lease lease agreements and
We'll turn the
contracts.
light on. We'll turn the light on. We
Please
get
do.
it right.
Exactly. Now, before we continue, I do have a quick message from our sponsor, Ekwa Marketing. Ekwa Marketing are offering our listeners a complimentary 60-minute digital strategy session. This is a one-on-one consultation with a senior strategist to help you map your 12-month high-value patient acquisition roadmap. You can check the availability at businessofesthetics.org/MSM. That's businessofesthetics, one word, .org/MSM. Now, back to our conversation here. Uh, right, Jay. Now, once the doors are open, things either stabilize or fall apart. Let's talk a little bit about staffing, from hiring to training to structuring roles. What does a properly built team actually look like in those first 6 to 12 months? And where do most practices go wrong when it comes to
Ugh.
HR?
Your most important resource, Don, in
Yeah,
your business is that human resource.
that's right.
It will make you or break you from the very beginning, where the person that answers that phone is called the director of first impressions. They're not your receptionist. Why? Because that is the director of a first impression, whether it is the one answering the phone. Now, today, there's more AI, virtual AI, than there's ever been. AI, it used to bother me when you get these cheesy, messages that never answered any question that you ever asked it. Now the AI is so sophisticated because you teach the AI what you want. But you need to have a solid clad team before you start. It's like you don't hire when you build a restaurant and order the food. I can't tell you how many times I've been to a restaurant. They're not open, but they're serving to get the cracks out of the way. Excuse me, the cracks out of the way. I've been invited to where the team, the cooks, the servers, It's like it's open, just like a cruise
Mhm.
line. Before they start
Mhm.
accepting passengers, they have travel agents and everything. Then they go on these cruises, and the team and everything serves them to get all the hiccups out. Plus,
Mhm.
you want to train them on marketing. You want to train them on EMR. You want to train them on the way that you handle things. You want to train them on money. How do you handle the
Mhm.
cash? So let's talk about it. So the takeaway is early teams should be lean, cross-trained, and built about revenue producing roles because you have to run it lean and mean. In my former practice, I intentionally overstaffed. Why did I do
Mhm.
that? Intentionally. I overstaffed once I was solid, all right, and profitable because there's always going to be somebody that calls out. There's always somebody that's going to be sick. I had 29 women in our practice. There's always somebody that's going to be pregnant. There's always somebody whose baby's going to get sick. All right. There's always going to be, or there's, and we didn't have much of a turnover. And as you grow, I don't want to start looking for somebody then. I want to be overstaffed so that as we're growing, there's no hiccup. All right.
Mhm.
And then midway through, when I see that we're getting busier and it can be a problem, I'll hire more. All right. So, what are they? The early stage from 0 to 6 months, you have an owner provider who is your supervising clinician, things like that. You have a front desk and a patient care coordinator. That's your director of first impressions. That is one person who handles the phones, they schedule, they help with membership sales. They may even room a patient. Later on in my practice, I had a position called a room or.
Okay.
Roomer. All they did was took somebody from the waiting room into the exam room. Why? Because what are the most common hated times? Most common hated times, the amount of time a patient has to sit in the reception area or waiting room, and then you put them in a room and they wait another 20 minutes. That's hateful. So I used to have a person that would grab the people in the room, bring them in, talk to them about what they're there for, and if they have any interest in other opportunities or things that we provide. All right? That was one thing. Then, when the procedure was done, we would have them clean up the room, not the MA. The MAs are training, right?
Mhm.
So then that's what we would do. All right.
Mhm.
So let me
So we
see.
got the owner provider, director of first impressions,
Yes.
and then who else? Who else are we having in our first 6 months?
Yep. Then you have your part-time marketing support, whether you're doing it in-house or you have a contractor and agency like Ekwa. All right. Do you hire Ekwa to do your marketing? Are they doing your website? Are they helping you with that? If you do it yourself, you're making the business mistake, biggest mistake. First of all, don't hire the kid who was the neighbor's child that took a couple courses and is doing it in school. No, you need to know somebody that does this for a living, is professional and knows what happens when things go wrong. And then you need a medical director if it's not the physician itself. Then we go to month 6 to 12. These are in the first 6 months. After that, you may need a second provider. Let's hope you do,
Mhm.
because you're really, really busy. And then you have to have a dedicated practice manager. That was my role when I ran the practice. I was the practice administrator. There's a difference between a manager and administrator. The
Mhm.
administrator has fiscal responsibility. They do negotiating. They can make the decisions. A
Mhm.
manager just does day-to-day operation. An administrator runs the entire operation and
Mhm.
foreseeable future. There's a big difference. And then take full-time estheticians or laser specialists, because if you're non-surgical, and if you are surgical, you want to have other ancillary providers to help you make additional monies, because you can't depend on just your hands alone. That means you're a slave to your business. You can never take time off. I know that when we took time off, we were still making money because I had other providers. I wasn't making as much money, but I'm still making money versus making nothing. And then have a part-time bookkeeper or somebody that does the finances to know, are the bills right? because many times you'll get invoices and they could be wrong and you're paying, or
Mhm.
you can have phony invoices. I'm not even talking about theft yet. All
Mhm.
right. So make sure you have that. So where do the practices go wrong? They hire too many people in the very beginning. They really,
Mhm.
and let me tell you something, that's a very big expense. They hire based on personality instead of capability. I take my time to hire and I fire quickly. All right. Because I want to make sure I get that right one. Personality is important because you're dealing with the public, but I want to know who's going to drive me further ahead into the future. Not you're giving me all you have right now because then there's nowhere for you to grow. You don't have a written job description or KPIs or MBOs, we used to call them in corporate America, management by objectives. What am I grading you on? What is your job description? You better know what that is from day one. I have to give it to you so I never hear that's not my job. And in the job description, it should say, and other duties as assigned, because your paycheck does not have what your title is. It has the name of the company you work for. You don't have any performance management. You don't have any onboarding or training. We do that with every client. We'll do onboarding. We'll do training when we hire. And the training has to be clear, concise, consistent with proper policies, procedures, and protocols. Why? So that when one team member leaves and another one comes in, there's your playbook. All right. Don't quarterbacks now wear these things on their wrist that they never used to wear and it's the play? It's their playbook,
Mhm.
right? Maybe the coach might send in another play from the sidelines. All right. But that's their playbook. They pay out commission structures that destroy their margins.
It's their playbook.
All right. And there's no documentation of anything. This is where
That's true.
practices go wrong with everything. So the first hire determines the culture, and the
Mhm.
culture determines retention.
Playbook that is, and one for indeed an efficient startup for your practice. Now, we are here at the last question, Jay. Now, you've seen practices that truly thrive and others that are constantly struggling to stay afloat. What are the key financial and operational indicators early on that tells you which direction a new practice is heading?
Don, it's really funny. I get practices that will call me and they say, I need help. And I say, what type of help do you need? And they start sharing with me what they think they need the help with. And as I
Mhm.
dig deeper, I said, before we can get to what you think you need help in, we need to do this. You need help in furnishing your home. Do you realize that your beams are cracked? Your structure is going to fall down? Do you realize that the screening over your lanai, all right, is swaying with the wind, has no structure to it? You need to do that before you do everything else. So let's talk about that for a second. The key financial and operational indicators that are from day one. So what's the takeaway? If you don't measure it, you can't fix it. And most practices measure nothing. I ask, how much do you make an hour in your exam room? I don't know. How do I figure that out? Okay, let's start from the basics. How many hours in the room are you in there, and how much revenue did you generate? Divide one into the other, and that tells you how much you generate. But it even goes further than that. Financial. What is your monthly burn rate? Burn rate? What is a burn rate? Your burn rate is how long is it going to be until you run out of money? That's your burn rate, okay? You need to know that. How much money am I going through a day, a week? That's a hard thing to say. A month. Now we're talking because I analyze clients' P&Ls every month as it relates to the prior month and as it relates to the same month in the prior year. Because I want to know, is there an ebb or a flow? Is it a parabolic effect like that? If it is, why? All right. And we look at different chart of accounts to see. Many times people don't even know what a P&L is. They don't know what a chart of accounts is. They put everything into cost of goods sold. All right. I don't mean to laugh. I'm sorry for those people that are listening. You want to know to run it like it's a real business. What is your supplies costing you? What is your maintenance costing you? What are your employees costing you? What are your employee benefits costing you? What are your supplies costing you? Supplies? I used to know what my supplies cost me on the medical side for insurance, medical, derm. I knew what they cost me for plastic surgery. I knew what they cost me for aesthetics because I charted it medical supply surgical, medical supply aesthetic, all under the category of medical supply. That was my chart, but my subcategories so that I know, am I spending too much on what item? What is my revenue per hour per provider? You remember I mentioned to you $1,000 or $2,000 an hour? Well, some people say if I can get 500 an hour, that's great. Well, I don't think so because if you are a PA or an NP and you're doing a couple of syringes of a dermal filler, and I'm not going to name any names, all
Appreciate it.
right, or a tox neuromodulator, if you can't get $1,000 or $2,000 in an hour, you could probably get $1,000 in 15 to 30 minutes. And if not, you're spending too much time talking. And if you're spending too much time talking, it means one of two things. Either you talk too much or you don't have enough business and you're spending time and you think that if you talk more, you can upsell, but the patient only has a certain amount of money to spend. So that's a very important thing. I always want to know, how much money do you have to spend? And then there is your gross margin by service line. How much is my gross margin? Not my net, my gross margin. Laser, surgery, RF, injectables. What is my patient acquisition cost? You ever watch Shark? Excuse me, you ever watch Shark Tank?
Of course.
One of my favorite shows. What is Mr. Wonderful's favorite question? What is your cost of client acquisition?
We should.
Question number one. What is your true cost landed? What do you
Mm.
sell it for? What's your margin? Your gross margin, your net margin. What's your burn rate? You got to run it like it's a business. And do you have membership or reoccurring revenue? Because if you ever want to sell your business, if I'm buying your business, I want to know, what am I buying? And do you have reoccurring revenue? I love reoccurring revenue. It tells me how I can spend because I sell my programs by the year. I do have
Mhm.
one-offs if you want to buy it by the hour, but my most is all membership related. You sign a contract for a year. Why is that? Because I know how much money I can generate in a year, and I know how to
Mhm.
staff my business because if I'm only bringing in 300,000 of revenue and I have $300,000 worth of expenses, I'm not making any money. But I know if I have 1 million of revenue coming in every year and my expenses are 500,000, now I can get a better website and I can do PPC and I could, you know what I'm saying? I can do all these things. So they are the takeaways from the financial side. And then you have your operational with your consult and your call, the marketing and the call to consult, the consult to treatment, the treatment to retreatment, and we call it a conversion cascade. We sell a 6 hour training program on that, but we work with companies and vendors all the time to help our client increase their revenue and profitability. It's just try not to do it on your own all the time. Get people who know what they're doing.
Anything that we're coming back to, it's the executive management team. That's really where you got to really start um, your journey with, because doing all of these things on your own, whew, as a first timer, that's just a recipe for trouble. So have we have arrived at pretty much the end of our episode over here. Jay, I would love to ask you this final key takeaway for our listeners listening in, wherever they're at their journey, perhaps in their first 1 to 3 years. What's the first thing that they can do tomorrow morning that can really change their trajectory for the better, uh, wherever they're at?
I ask everybody, you don't know how to get there unless you know where you're going. If I invited you to my house for dinner tonight, Don, do you have a plan how to get here? And your answer is going to be yes. And I'm going to say to you, what is your plan? And you're going to tell me you're going to go on your mobile device and you're going to click on navigation. You're going to type in my address and it's going to show you how to get right to my house, right? That's a plan. But yet, if I ask an experienced business, how are you going to get from 1 million to 1.5 million to 2 million next year? How are you going to get there? And they're going to tell me, well, I'm going to do some PPC and I'm going to, yeah, yeah. And I'm saying, you don't have a plan, a business plan. We create business plans for every client that's starting up. It's 0 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 12 months, 1 to 3, and 3 to 5 years. We can alter that plan, and we do every time we get to each phase because what we projected today may change. Why? Because if you're running a business that requires going from one location to another and you're paying gas from your employees, prices go up. The prices of flights go up. The prices of fuel goes up. The prices of things to produce the supplies and the equipment you need and the back orders and the shortages. But let's get past that. What is your plan when you have a shortage? If you're an IV business, you can't plan when there's a shortage on saline IV bags. But more importantly, create a plan. What is your plan for third? It's too late for second quarter, right? This is almost May already. All right.
Yeah.
You better have third and fourth quarter plans. We do. We already know a schedule for every podcast for the rest of the year. We already know what we're going to do for our website for the rest of the year. We already know what types of promotions. So you need to have a business plan that you're able to audit financially, operational, administratively. Never run your business by the seat of the pants and thinking that it will just happen. It's not field of dreams, build it and they shall come. You need to have a good, solid plan and review it again, and review it again. And my last takeaway is don't be afraid to hire a coach and don't say you can't afford to. You can't afford not to because I negotiate equipment and save people in 1 year more than they paid me. I don't care if it's on capital equipment. I don't care if it's on a website. I don't care if it's on payroll. I don't care if it's on a skin pen. I don't care if it's on anything. I'll negotiate everything for you and leases that will save you tens of thousands of dollars. All right. And therefore, don't be afraid because if you can name me any professional athlete, any that doesn't have a coach, then they're not a professional athlete. And if you're a professional business PA, NP, physician, you need a coach. All right. You may be the coach to your team, but you need the coach too, just to make sure that you stay on track.
Now, Jay, if our listeners want to connect with you or the team at Shorr Solutions to make sure that they aren't fighting these operational fires, where should they go?
All of our social media is at Shorr Solutions, Shorr Solutions with an S plural because we have more than one solution. All right. Our website, www.shorr, Shorr, solutions with an S.com. And my phone number is 561-289-4640. And let me close with saying that Shorr Solutions won the Practice Management Company of the Year in 2018, 19. They didn't give it away in 20 because of the pandemic. All right. We've been in one in 21, and then we won it in 24 and 25, 5 out of 7 years. And I have the honor of being granted the Lifetime Achievement Award from Informa and the Aesthetic Show. And that's not for the business side. That's for all the education and philanthropy and life-saving measures that you do for the good of society. So our company is filled with just professional people that have owned practices, know the ins and outs and problem solving, and we'd be more than happy to help any one of you.
Success in this industry isn't just about the clinical skill, it's truly about the structure. From how you form your business to the lease you sign, every decision compounds over time. And if you're looking for clarity on how to attract high value patients, don't forget to grab your 60-minute strategy session at businessofesthetics.org/MSM. That's businessofesthetics, one word, .org/MSM. I'm Don Adeesha, and this has been the Business of Aesthetics podcast. Thanks for listening.